Welcome to another episode of Multifamily University. We are here again with Anderson Advisors, and we're so happy to be here with Preston Knight of Anderson Advisors talking today about protecting your legacy. And I'm thrilled that we're here to talk about asset protection and wealth preservation. These are two things that I think every adult should really care about in order to have a good life for yourself and to create as best a life you can for people you love that are going to, live after you. So I'm very excited about tonight. I do want to say that we are recording this event. So yes, you will get a recording in your email. I'll talk later about the Investor Club because this is only going to be available for a certain amount of time if you are not an Investor Club member. So we'll talk about those details later. But basically, yes, it will be in your email and the deck will be included. Is that right, Preston? A PDF
Yeah,
of the deck? Yeah.
yeah,
So
you're
there'll
you're
be,
welcome to
yeah.
share.
So pay, listen. You don't have to worry so much about taking notes. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Preston. Oh, we will be answering questions at the end. And I would love it if you would put your questions in the Q&A box as opposed to the chat box, because the chat box just kind of is a stream of consciousness and it's hard to keep track of what's answered and what's not answered. So again, at the end, we will answer your questions. Go
Awesome.
ahead, Preston.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here with this group again. One of my favorite groups of investors to chat with. I think what we do at Anderson and what you guys do, they fit together really, really well. But today we're going to talk about how to protect your wealth and really kind of how to protect it, not just for you right now, but for your family after you're gone. So those are things I completely agree that every single adult that should think about, right? Unfortunately, there's a couple of things in life we can't avoid. That's taxes, Uncle Sam getting his piece, and the other one is death. So we have to, but we'll try and keep it a little lighthearted. So let's get started. But before we jump too far in, I am an attorney, and so I always have this slide. And if you see any attorney that doesn't have this slide, well, they're just being silly. So the most important slide, if you want to screenshot it, take a picture of it, it's great. Essentially, it's saying I'm an attorney, but I'm not your attorney. So everything we're talking about today are hypotheticals. Even if you ask questions and I give you more of a direct answer, it's still not legal advice. And so I have to say all of those things. My disclaimer, got to be careful out there, right? So again, screenshot, take pictures, most important slide right here. Just kidding, guys. Just kidding. All right, so about me. Um, I have been an attorney for Anderson for just about 3.5 years now. And before Anderson, I did litigation, so I'm used to suing people, which is really handy. I've also worked for the Securities and Exchange Commission, so I'm very familiar with all of the rules, especially when it comes to syndications, and how to not break them, because I've seen a lot of people break them, and then it's sad when they're crying across the table from somebody who's going to take all their stuff away. So just be careful out there, everyone. I'm also a small business owner. I own a service business with 2 locations, one in Utah, one in Reno, Nevada. And I also own uh, a retail pet food business and rental properties. And I'm a heavy investor in Bitcoin. And so I have a little bit of experience all across the board. So that's why I get to be a senior attorney at Anderson, because I brought a ton of experience along with me. And really, I love what I do. I love talking with small business owners, investors, making sure that they're protected, making sure that they get the most tax advantage structure that they can get. And I love teaching. I love teaching. I wanted to be a teacher for a little while, and then I realized that I don't love people. I don't like kids that much, so I couldn't be a teacher. I was thinking college, but I was like, nah, I'll teach adults because adults actually want to learn and they want to implement what you teach, and it makes me feel good. So that's why we're here today. So that's a little bit about me. Before I jump to the next slide, do we have emojis turned on? Do we have them turned on? I don't see the option on mine.
I don't
No,
know.
no worries. I was gonna have some, give me thumbs up if you've heard of Anderson, but if you don't have an emoji option, that's fine. No big deal there. So we're gonna a little bit about Anderson. These are the founding founding principals, and then Michael Bowman was added later on. So I'm sure many of you have seen Clint Coons and Toby Mathis. They're all over the internet. They have great YouTube channels. If you're not subscribed to them, I highly recommend subscribing to their YouTube channels. They are always releasing just fantastic information, and they do it for free, right? They do it completely for free. But they started Anderson in 1999, just Toby and Clint, and they started doing asset protection because, believe it or not, about 35% of attorneys out there go on the other side. They go into like personal injury law, right? So I was just recently in Vegas, and for Vicky in Vegas, Vicky, you know, driving down I-15, you see all of those billboards everywhere. It's personal injury attorney and personal injury attorney, personal injury attorney. There might be a strip club, but then there's another personal injury attorney billboard. And that's just what it is, right? I was driving into Reno, and the 5 billboards on the way down the hill into Reno are all personal injury attorneys. So there's a bunch of attorneys out there that are suing people to take their assets from them. And there's a very small percentage of us who are on the other side protecting your assets. So Clint and Toby started that, and then Michael joined a few years later, and we've been around for 26 years just being the specialists in asset protection. So that's, and what makes us so special is we take a holistic approach. We have asset protection, which is really important, but we also have in-house tax now. That's kind of Toby's like, hey, you know, you're getting information from an attorney saying do it this way, and then a CPA saying do it completely separate. How can we get them synergized on the same page working forward, right? And making sure that everyone's communicating correctly. So we brought it in-house, and then we also have our estate planning department, which is huge now and really an important part of what we do, I think. And so that's the whole Anderson system. We bring it all together. We have the asset protection, the tax, and the estate planning to make sure that we're looking at your total picture, not just one little aspect. Because we realize that not one size fits all, right? A lot of attorneys out there do it that way. We absolutely don't. All right. That was a little bit about Anderson. I didn't want to take too much time on that because, well, frankly, we got a lot to cover. And I don't want you to feel like it's death by PowerPoint, but we're going to have some PowerPoint, and then we're going to talk about structuring and that kind of stuff. But starting here, as investors, as business owners, as professionals, as people that have worked their tail off, maybe even like in a blue collar job for years and years and growing your wealth, right? Now it feels like this, right? Every time I drive down the street, I see these billboards. Like I was saying, there's one right by my office in Utah that says billions recovered for our clients. Billions recovered. I'm like, well, really, what does that mean? 333 million recovered for the attorneys plus, right? The attorneys are making out like bandits, but everybody has this bullseye on their back because in America, there's 2 ways to get rich, right? You win the lottery, that's one way, not in Nevada, not in Utah, it's not available. Or 2, you sue somebody that has money and take it from them. So all of us that have grown and built wealth, we all have this bullseye on our back. And we have to, like, I don't know, sometimes I don't sleep very well at night. It just is what it is. Like, it's just one of those things, right? Because I want to make sure that I can enjoy what I've built, and my kids can maybe enjoy what I built later on, or I just give it to charity and they can build their own wealth. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So, but where does that risk come from? Now, I know a lot of you on here are syndication investors. You're like, Preston, I invest in syndications. I'm a limited partner or a member in an LLC that's a manager managed, right? So I'm a limited partner. I don't have any risk. I just risk the capital that I invest. And that's true in a syndication, but I bet a lot of you are diversified, right? You're not just investing in syndications. Maybe you have some money in the stock market. Maybe you have rental real estate of your own. Maybe you have, I don't know, a small business. Maybe you have a W-2 job and a 401k and an IRA, right? You're very diversified, and that's a good thing. We want you to be. But there's always risk, right? So where does it come from? So what we're going to talk more about today is the outside liability, right? Liability that we create just living in this world. I don't know. I really wish we had emojis on, but maybe let's do this before I go on too much in content. How many kids do you guys have? Just drop a number into the chat. Is it 1? Is it 0? Is it 14? I don't know. I live in Utah, so there's lots and lots of kids. 3, we got 3 with Mark. 0, 3 grown children. Awesome. 4, 2. All right. Grown children are the best. 2 adult children. Are they adults? These days, I don't know. Like my kid's 19 and in the Air Force, and I still pay for like all of his stuff, right? Like, are they ever really grown, or do we just enable? I don't know. It doesn't even matter. Um, so yeah, so that's wonderful. Question marks. Does that mean you have one on the way? 4 nieces and nephews. Yeah, so you're thinking about that. Well, we have personal liability, right? And so where does that come from? And a lot, like the main thing is, car accidents. That's the easiest one to think about because we're all getting behind these, 3 to 6,000 pound machines driving at crazy speeds, and sometimes things happen, right? So that's the big thing. But you can also have liability if you're a parent and you have children. Like my kids are 17 and 19, and they're on my insurance. They both live at home, right? And they drive vehicles. So that's another liability. That's not even something I have control over. I try to say, hey, please drive safe, but they're teenagers, right? They do what they want. So yeah, I mean, if they get into a car accident, who are they suing, right? They're not suing my kids. My kids are broke. They're suing dad, and that's terrible. We also have like business disputes. That means like, hey, maybe you had a partner and your partnership didn't work out great, and you didn't have a really strong operating agreement on how you were going to exit it. Now your partner's suing you, or you had a non-compete, but you didn't follow the non-compete, and somebody's suing you. That's huge, right? That can be millions of dollars. There's a case out of Utah that it literally was millions of dollars. The guy started a new bread company after he sold his and got sued for like 2.7 million or something like that. So it's huge. And then professional malpractice, that's another area where we have to really think about that liability. Where does it come from? Well, if I'm a medical professional or a legal professional, or even if you're a realtor or something like that, you have to be really careful. An insurance agent, I know my insurance broker, he carries errors and omissions because sometimes you just don't write the right policy and you get it wrong and you can get sued, right? So you have to think about that. There's all this outside risk that we have to be really careful. But how do we control that outside risk? Well, we have to think about where it's coming from and who's after our nest egg, right? Who's after our investments. So we have that outside risk. Inside risk isn't a big deal when we're talking about syndications, right? So here, there's probably zero inside risk because the syndication is going to handle that, and the general partner of that syndication is going to handle all of that risk. So if something happens, it's not coming to you as an investor. We have that outside risk, and you always have that silent partner. That guy, he's like, oh, you made some money? Hand over my piece. It's always coming after you. His name's Uncle Sam, right? So it's coming after you. But we have structures, and this is where it's really important. We have structures to really contain or minimize all of that risk. So you see here, we have an LLC that has charging order protections, and that's going to protect us from the outside risk. And I'm going to switch over to a whiteboard, and we're going to draw this out just a little bit. Did it switch? Maybe. Maybe.
Not yet.
Uh-oh. I think in the Zoom window, I shared the wrong thing I shared. So let's share the right thing. It's going to get crazy just for 1 second. I promise, guys, will be
There you go.
okay.
I see a
Perfect.
whiteboard.
There it is. All right. So we have this, we have what we call a charging order protected entity. And it makes a nice acronym called COPE, right? So we have a charging order protected entity. And the reason we use this is, let's say we're down here and we're sad because Mr. Creditor over here has a piece of paper saying, you owe me lots of dollars and I want to take it from you. Because they have a judgment and the judge was like, hey, yep, you can take whatever they have. Well, that sucks, right? But if all we have is owned, and I'm going to change colors actually, and what we call a charging order protected entity, we have protection from ourselves. And that is a very good thing. So we have this LLC where the sole remedy is a charging order, which is like a lien, right? So they have this order saying you owe me money. You're like, haha, I have a little bit of money in my account, but my big bank account's up here. My syndications are up here. My brokerage account's up here. My crypto, I'll draw a Bitcoin symbol, is up here. I have a little bit. You can have this, Mr. Creditor. That's okay. But really, my value is up here. And this is what I own, but I have charging order protections. So they're like, okay, Mr. Creditor's like, yay, I'm going to try and take this from you. Now, in some states, there is a statute, and I'm going to pick on California just a little bit today because I happen to know those really well because we have lots of investors in California. So in California, if you own an LLC and that LLC has assets in the state of California, your creditor can go and say, hey, I'm going to place a lien on distributions out of your LLC. And that's fantastic. But California law goes a little bit further. If it's going to take too long for your creditor to get paid, California allows for foreclosure of your membership interest. So what did they just do? They allow for the creditor to take your business from you. Instead of you owning your business, they're like, nope, not anymore. I own your business. I'm going to liquidate all of these assets that you own and take them to pay this judgment. And now Mr. Creditor is super duper duper happy. In California, charging order is the remedy unless, and I'm paraphrasing, unless it takes too long. And then Mr. Creditor can foreclose and take your business interest. That sucks. But if you set it up right, and use the correct states. We like Wyoming. Delaware is another great state. Nevada is another great state. In Wyoming, for example, the sole remedy that a creditor can have against your LLC is a charging order, meaning they have to drive over to Wyoming, the state of Wyoming, file this judgment in the courts, and they get a lien against distributions. And what if you don't take any distributions? They never get paid. And all of your stuff just sits in this LLC waiting for you when that charging order goes away. Now, because it's such a pain in the butt, 99.9% of the time, they don't even try to enforce that charging order. They don't go to Wyoming to try and do it. They're just like, dang it, it's not worth it because we're not going to get paid. So we love these COPE entities, charging order protected entities. We use them all the time, and it's a great place for you to store your syndication interests, your extra cash, your brokerage accounts, Bitcoin, if you invest in notes, anything that's not going to cause you liability, you can dump into this one bucket, this one LLC, and it is going to protect all of your assets from you. It's really a cool tool. I don't think enough people use it. I personally, with my wife and I, we have a top in our bank account, a top amount. We're like, okay, if our bank account, we have a range. If it goes above this range, we move our extra cash into our safe asset LLC. And if we go below, then we take our extra cash, take a little bit out, and fill up the bank account again. With teenagers, it feels like, especially lately, goes below more than goes above, but that is what it is, right? That's the joy of being a teenage parent. But these movements of your money back and forth are actually not taxable events. So you can do it 100 times a day if you really wanted to. It's really cool. And you get the protections of the Wyoming LLC and the charging order protections. So, if you do have some sort of more risky business, like I just spoke with a general surgeon yesterday, super nice lady. She's an Army vet. We kind of like talked about service. I was in the Air Force. She was in the Army. She's a general surgeon now. She has her own practice. She contracts with a local hospital. So we were talking about it, and I was telling her about, hey, you probably should set some of this into this charging order protected entity because you do something that's pretty high risk. She's literally cutting people open for a living. Not my bag. That's why I went to law school, not medical school, because even the sight of blood, like, anyway, super nice lady, but we were talking about it. And it's really like, it's one of those things where she didn't even think, like, oh, yeah, I should probably protect my nest egg from myself because I'm probably the biggest liability for it. She didn't have any kids either. So, those of you with, zero kids, same kind of thing. She wants to leave everything to her nephew. And I asked her if she would adopt me, and she said no. General surgeons make more money than attorneys. So, anyway, she's not old enough to adopt me anyway. That's neither here nor there. Um, but yeah, so that's really like one of the biggest strategies that we use with our passive investors, right? But the cool thing is you can do all of those things, but a lot of you guys are going to be real estate investors too. Like maybe you have your own rental properties. You're like, I have been a landlord for 20 years and I want to slowly move out of it, but I still have a bunch of rental properties. We work that into a structure as well. Let's change to red, where we use stacked LLCs to protect you from them, right? So we use the same structure with a Wyoming LLC. And then, I mean, maybe you're in Indiana, maybe you're in Idaho, maybe you're in North Carolina. So we set up entities like this. So we also protect those. But we always want to have a big line in between our non-liability assets, so syndication notes, crypto brokerage accounts, and our liability assets that can burn down those houses, rental houses. And then kind of on the side, you would have like your active businesses would kind of sit over here to the left. And that's just a general structure. This is something that we do every single day. This is what our strategists do. They sit down, they ask you, hey, what do you have going on? What are your plans in the future? And then they come up with a really detailed plan on how to structure it for the best possible asset protection. And the cool thing, what I love about Wyoming and why we use it so very much, not only is it charging order protected, but they also don't report the ownership information. So you get anonymity too. So not only like somebody could look it up and say, what does Preston Knight own? Well, I own a couple LLCs in Utah because, well, it's my cleaning company. It doesn't own any assets. If you want to sue me and take my dirty towels, you're welcome to them. We do like 14 loads of laundry a day. Yes, 14. It's crazy. But you're not going to find any of my assets, my valuable stuff. I look poor. Honestly, it's like, oh, Preston's broke. Like, and that's the idea. We want it to look like, hey, you don't got anything, but you're going to control everything. And that's what we really, really focus on. We try to get you that anonymity and then the asset protection, right? So let's see if this works. Can I get back? It worked. Anna, it worked. I did it right
Awesome.
this
That
time.
was quick too. Super quick.
Yeah, well, we try anyway. All right. Anna, did you want to take over here? We're about halfway through.
Yes, I want to, let me just share my screen. Oops. I'm going to do this and get some things out of my way.
While you're doing that, Jade has three grown children and two grandchildren. I cannot wait for grandchildren. I'm so excited. But also, my kids better not have kids yet. They're 17 and
I was going to
19.
say, I think you're going to want to wait a little bit, right?
Well, I mean, I'm excited though. So anyway.
All right. Well, talk about excited. I am excited. I'm going to show you, I'm going to take a minute and introduce you to basically a lucrative opportunity for you to make equity level returns with close to debt level risk and cash flow. Yes, cash flow from day one of your investment. This is the Falls at Brisbane Commons. And yes, I agree. It's gorgeous. It's a brand new 240 unit Class A property that we built in Mesa, Arizona. That's one of the best multifamily markets in the country. Falls at Brisbane Commons pref equity is an investment that's basically superior on the capital stack. It's above LP dollars. So it takes priority over regular equity, meaning every dollar of the $16.5 million in common equity must be depleted before the pref equity investors see any impact. Now, this is a really unique position in the capital stack, and it provides high payment priority, and it makes it a safer investment. And with an expected exit in less than 2 years, it also has advantages of being a shorter term investment. Basically, you would have an annualized preferred return of 12 to 13%, depending on how much you invest. And 6% of that preferred return is paid out on a quarterly basis once you start investing. And then the remaining amount is accrued and paid out at the exit. Now we're raising pref equity in tranches, and we started raising the first tranche in Q2 of 2024. And those investors have been receiving their quarterly distributions like clockwork every quarter this year. We just opened up the investment again for a short time. One important note, in normal times, pref equity rates for this type of opportunity would be 9 to 10% total return. And we fully expect them to return to that level within the next year as rates continue to drop. This is an unusual time. Now, just take a look at this really gorgeous property. Construction is 100% complete. We're in the lease up phase, which is going very well. There's a gorgeous pool surrounded by cabanas. There's a large gym, spacious clubhouse. There's even a movie room. It's not shown here. It's really awesome. The apartments at the falls are large. They're beautiful with quartz countertops, stainless steel appliances, spacious bedrooms, and really nice walk-in closets. Yeah, again, really, oh, they all come with balconies. Great, great property, really well designed. So here are the investment classes. Again, your cash flow starts as soon as you put your money paid out on a quarterly basis. And for those of you that do not already know, we rolled out our investor club about 6 months ago. Now, this is a free portal that gives you access to data and tools, and most importantly, access to our educational webinars like this one. There are 3 tiers. There's bronze, silver, and gold, and everyone starts as bronze. So even if you're not an investor club member, as soon as you go there, boom, you are a bronze. And that gives you access to webinars for a limited period. If you want access to full webinars along with PDFs of the decks, and they're not going to get cut off time-wise, all that takes is a phone call with our investor relations team, and poof, you become a silver member. Now, that gold, that coveted gold, all you got to do, all of our investors are gold members automatically. So anyone that's an investor automatically is a gold level. They get extra perks like exclusive live online events with Neal and myself. We walk you through behind the scenes data and systems in our multifamily data centric world. It's actually really cool. Here's some of the great content available on the Investor Club. Neal's location magic system, which is very awesome. It lays out how you can use free data sources available on the internet to everybody to find the best markets to invest in. And then there is the highly anticipated real estate trends. Thousands of investors and multifamily professionals sign up every year to watch this. It's like a stampede of people to get to Neal's data. The 2025 real estate trends just went live. We just presented it several weeks ago, and you can catch all of the latest trends and predictions as an Investor Club member. And remember, it's free to be a member. So if you're interested to learn more about the Falls at Brisbane Commons pref equity opportunity, again, gorgeous picture there, or you want to upgrade your viewing access to the Investor Club, maybe you want to do both. Our Director of Investor Relations, Peter, that's the guy to connect with. You can scan the code on the screen, or you can email Peter at invest@growcapitus.com. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Preston.
Maybe. All right. I'm here. It just took my camera a second to flip back up. So awesome. Thanks, Anna.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the learning platforms are so amazing. Like you guys sent me access to it. It's pretty awesome. So I think everyone should definitely take advantage of that because the more info you have, the better, really, when it comes to anything. So, all right, back to this, I guess. All right. So we get to talk. This is probably my favorite topic to talk about. And it sounds weird. And I know you're like, Preston, estate planning, really? And I'm like, yes, it really is my favorite because it's so, so, so important. And I have so many stories from clients, so many personal stories to share. We just don't have all day. And I know you don't want to listen to me all night about this. You probably are like, I have to eat and I don't want to listen to an attorney any longer than I absolutely have to. But this is important, so pay attention. So we're going to talk about estate planning. And really, like I always say, if you have children or if you have property, there's no and, there's an or. If you have children or property, and then maybe you have both, but if you have one or the other, then you need to have a really, really good estate plan. And you need to think about what's going to happen to that wealth that you have been accumulating your entire life and make a plan for it, or somebody else will make the plan for you, and that somebody else is probably not going to do with it what you want them to do with it. We definitely don't want to leave it up to our friends, the judges, right? Um, so yeah, let's chat a little bit about that. There's basically three different ways you can approach estate planning. The first way is to have no plan at all. Took me a little while to find this picture. I hope you like it. But yeah, it's
It's
no
pretty
plan at all.
hysterical.
Right? I had AI create one, but it had like weird hands. So I'm like, no, we're not using that one. But I found this one and I kind of like anyway. I think this is me in like 20 years.
I was wondering. I honestly, I see the resemblance.
Ouch. No, I don't want to be a judge. I have no desire to be a judge. But anyway, no plan is called what it's called is the legal term is intestate probate. It means you don't have a trust, you don't have anything. You're just going to leave it up to the state. And leaving it up to the state might sound fun. In fact, I have a client, he's a CPA, and we were chatting, and he doesn't have any descendants, and he's not married. He's like, Preston, I absolutely not want to have an estate plan. And I'm like, what? That doesn't make any sense. I'm like, it's going to be really expensive. He's like, I don't care. I'm like, but you're going to let somebody else decide what happens to your stuff. He's like, I don't care. I'm like, oh, okay. And this is what I think. I think that if something happens to him, he is gonna, if I'm religious, he's gonna go to heaven and he's gonna sit there and eat a bowl of popcorn and watch the fireworks because there is no plan and people are gonna fight over his stuff. That's not a great plan, but if you want a good show, I mean, sure, you could do it that way. We all know the artist formerly known as Prince. I'm sure most people in here have heard of him. When he died, he left millions and millions of dollars behind and no estate plan at all, no will, no nothing. And that intestate probate has gone on since he died. And what was that, like 12 years ago, 13 years ago? But here's the real winner, right? You have hundreds of people coming out of the woodwork staking a claim on his estate. Like, no, that's mine. They all hired attorneys, and the estate has an attorney to defend it. So who is really winning? Yep, the attorneys. So think about that when you're like, I don't need a plan. The attorneys win. It's expensive. It takes a long time. And you're leaving what happens to your stuff up to this guy that's on the screen. I don't want to do that, right? Yeah. Attorneys like to give other attorneys money, and it's really evident. So no plan is intestate probate. And if you own property in multiple states, you have to go through probate in all of those states. And every single state has different rules on who gets your stuff, and then everybody's fighting over it, and it costs thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, which eats away the estate because who's paying the attorney bill? Your estate is. I forget which computer is doing what. The second option, having a will alone. You could just do a will. That's totally fine. That's one way to go. It still goes through probate. Probate is a public process of proving the will, of saying, here's the will from, Granddad Allen. And Granddad Allen said that Preston should be the executor. Take it to court, and the court looks at it, and then they wait for other people to, dispute that, or creditors to come in and say, hey, Grandpa Allen owed me money. We're going to take some of the estate before the heirs get anything. And then the court's going to be like, okay, and they're going to take some time and wait for people to dispute it. It takes up to, 12 to 18 months. In California, it got up to 24 months during COVID. Could you imagine your stuff tied up in court for 24 months? Ugh. Anyway, and it takes time. And again, if you have property in multiple states, even with a will, you have to take your will to every single state and go through the probate process. And who's the winner? Who is the winner? Again, it's that guy. And Anna, I don't look like that guy. So at least there's that. I
At
mean,
least there's that.
I don't have all the hundreds in my pocket anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway. um, anyway, so yeah, so the attorneys win. And the great thing is some states, and I'm picking on you again, California, but you're not the only one, tell you how much you have to pay your attorney. Check out this code. This is from the California Code. And I'm going to summarize it. California Code says if you go through probate and you are going to pay your attorney. And Florida has a very similar statute, Anna and Ben, just so you know. They tell you how much you're going to pay your attorney if you go through probate. And they pass it off like, no, 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 we're doing it to protect the consumer. We're trying to make it so attorneys can't charge exorbitant fees, right? So we're going to protect all those retirees down there in Florida. No, what they're saying is this is how much you will pay your attorney. If you see that highlighted red word, it says shall. Anytime in a statute, when it says shall, that is required. And I did the math for us, so you don't have to sit down and be like, all right, 4% of the first 100,000, 3% of the next 100,000. I did the math. Wrong computer, this one. In California, if you have a $1 million estate, it will cost your estate a minimum of $23,000 in attorney's fees. $1 estate in California is like, hey, I live in a little tiny shack in the middle of the city. It
Yeah.
takes a little tiny baby house to hit $1 million. $5, 63,000, $10 million, 113,000. If we go back here, I'm going to see if my pen will do it right. Anything above 25 million, come on, pen, let's work, pen, is a reasonable amount to be determined by the court. So we're going to let an attorney determine how much another attorney should get paid. I mean, I think I'm in the wrong business. Instead of asset protection, I should have just moved to California and done probate because, a $5 million estate, do a few of those a year. Right, Anna?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh,
But
anyway,
I personally don't have to worry about that because I had
no, you don't,
Anderson
because
build my living
there's a better
estate.
answer, and that's the next
Yes,
slide.
yes.
Yes,
My living trust.
that's
Yeah,
yep. There's a better
that's what I
option.
did.
Why didn't it change? There we go. But the better option is set up a living trust. The living trust is this living document that grows with you as you grow. It's the way that you can plan and say, hey, certain people are going to get certain parts of my estate. Certain people are not getting anything out of my estate. You can disinherit people. I might disinherit my son because he's making me pay his insurance and he's a grown man and he's in the military. I'm like, bro, pay your own insurance. I'm just kidding. I'm not going to disinherit him over that. But I like to think of a trust as like this bucket that we put all of our ownership in. So our ownership of that LLC that's going to hold our syndications, that LLC ownership goes into the trust bucket. If we have rental properties, that LLC ownership goes into the trust bucket. If we have a business like a cleaning business in Reno, that ownership goes into the bucket. Our coats, our gun collection, our jewelry, our precious metals, everything goes into that bucket. And the cool thing is, there's a set of instructions for the bucket. So when we do something and we check out of this life, somebody else steps in, takes those instructions and distributes our property according to the way we laid it out, right? So we get to keep that control and it bypasses probate. I used to work with an attorney and we would do these consults with people and all these questions would come up. Like it'd be like, hey, Preston, can I? With my living trust and fill in the blank. It doesn't matter what goes in that blank. The answer is yes, as long as it's not illegal. So can I keep everything in trust for my children until they graduate college? Yes. Can I keep everything in trust and distribute over time so they don't blow it all right when I pass? The answer is yes. Can I give part of it to a horse rescue and part of it to a dog rescue and $10 to my son because he doesn't pay his own insurance? Yes. Can I put a contingency on my daughter that she only inherits if she divorces the dirtbag? That answer is no. You can't blackmail your family to get divorced to inherit, right? So that's illegal. That's an example of what you can't do. But pretty much anything else, whatever you want, it's your stuff. Hey, I had a client the other day. This is the coolest thing. He has a gun collection. He lives in Wyoming. And he's like, Preston, I want to have a lottery for my grandchildren to basically choose which gun they want out of my collection. So we're going to draw names out of a hat. And when your name's drawn, you get to go choose a gun. And they're just going to deal with it. I'm like, that is amazing. I never even thought of doing a lottery. That's really cool. So he's going to do that for his gun collection. We had another client, super great family. And in what they're going to do for all the personal effects, because there's certain things that everybody wants, right? Everybody wants, that teapot that grandma made tea in every day for her entire life. Well, the family is actually going to give out a certain amount of monopoly money to every single member of the family, and then they're going to have an auction and they're going to bid on it. And when they run out of monopoly money, they just get whatever's left, right? But if there's something that they really want, they can bid more monopoly money. I loved that idea. It's fantastic. So again, you get to keep control. Another thing that comes up a lot is like maybe you have, 3 children, and maybe one of those children has a substance abuse problem. And you're like, okay, well, the other 2 kids are doing great. They can inherit money, but child number 3, you're the baby, you kind of got babied and you fell into, not a great crowd, whatever. I'm going to keep all your money in trust. And you're not going to get any of it until you prove to the successor trustee that you've been clean. And maybe not just a urinalysis, I want a hair follicle test. I didn't even know that was a thing until I got called to do one for a job I applied for like right after high school. I'm like, you're going to shave my arm? They're like, yeah. I'm like, why? Because they can tell if you've done drugs and the whole time that hair has been growing. I'm like, oh, luckily I don't do drugs, so that wasn't a problem for me, but that's interesting. So you can set parameters like that. I had one client, she was a sweet little old lady. She was like 76 and we were doing her living trust. And she's like, she only had one child, an only child. He was kind of spoiled. She let me know he's kind of spoiled and he's really bad with money. I'm like, okay. She's like, what I would like to do is keep his inheritance in trust until he turns 65. I'm like, that could be it's awesome, right?
That's a long time.
It could be, right? So he was in his 40s and she was still in good health. So, but it does what she did for him. You're going to love this. She funded his retirement because
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
knew that he'd had no 401k, he had no IRA savings, he had nothing. So
Yep.
she said, you don't get any of your inheritance until you're of retirement age, because then you'll have Social Security. Hopefully, you'll be more mature not to just blow all the money. And I want you to not just try to live off of Social Security and eat dog food, right? It just
Hmm.
is. And that's the world we live in. You can do whatever you want with your stuff. It's so powerful and you can change it, right? So maybe you had that kid that had a drug problem when they were 17, but now we're 20 years in the future and they're 37 and you're like, hey, you know what? You've been clean for like 15 years. That's awesome. I can change it easily. I can change that trust, can make amendments anytime I want because it's revocable, meaning it's all my stuff. I do with it what I want, right? So you can change it, you can amend it, you can update it as your family grows. Maybe you have that like one grandkid that you just don't like. I don't know, they're like mean and they come to your house and they break stuff. My in-laws have one of those. My nephew, he likes to like break lamps and stuff. I'm like, you need to take him out of the trust. He doesn't need any of your stuff because he's just gonna break it anyway. They won't listen to me. That's why they're in-laws, right? If it was my mom, I would be like, no, mom, but they're in-laws, so I can only help try to guide them. But it's huge, right? And then like, yeah, skipping probate. A lot of people are like, yeah, but ladybird deeds. Like, yeah, sure. If you want somebody to inherit right away, or have a small estate in some states let you bypass probate if you have a small estate. I don't think that's any of you guys. You're not going to have a small estate if you're here. You're investing in like these opportunities and you're growing your wealth. So you're not going to qualify for a small estate to bypass probate. So you need to take steps to do that. And it's not really for you. None of this is for you. Like your estate plan is not for you. It's for your inheritance, for your heirs, for the line down. So you can even set up, I love this, a legacy. So you could go generations and keep your estate. Think of like the Vanderbilts. Now you have to have lots of money to do that, but you can go for generations and keep that and make sure that you're paying for your kids' college and your grandkids' college and your great grandkids' college. How cool is that? It could be someone that barely even knows your name, but they're like, you know what? Great grandpa Preston paid for college. That's pretty cool. I like that. So it's huge. All right. I didn't want to be a Debbie Downer. So we talked about how to protect your stuff. We talked about how to set up the legacy. But I saw some questions in here. How do we do
Yep.
this? You know, my estate's going to be different, or my plan might be different. How much does it cost? All of that stuff. We're not selling anything. We're giving away free 45-minute strategy sessions where you get to sit down and like that blueprint that I drew out. That was just one that I made up off the top of my head, but we'll come up with your blueprint. We'll talk about what you have going on. We'll talk about, hey, you know what? You are in syndications. Fantastic. How do we protect that? Hey, you are in rental properties. You do have a brokerage account. You are an MD and you're practicing medicine, so you need to protect yourself. Or, hey, you have a plumbing business that's doing really well. How is that taxed? Can we minimize those things? All of our strategists are super well versed in setting up all of our structures, and we're giving away 45-minute strategy sessions so you can sit down with them and get something custom for you. It's not a one size fits all. I see some attorneys out there that are like, only do S corporations. You only want an S corporation. Anytime you do an active business, only an S corporation. And that doesn't make any sense to me. I'm like, yeah, S corporations are fantastic in the right circumstances, but sometimes you want a C corporation, or sometimes you might want a partnership. What? Yes, I have a partnership for my Bitcoin mining company. That is an active business. It has active income, but I have so much depreciation from the machines themselves that it offsets all of the income. And so it just makes more sense for it to be taxed as a partnership, issue my wife and I at negative K1, and that offsets my income here at Anderson, right? So again, it's not a one size fits all thing. It's your blueprint fits you. And that's what we do.
Great. And
Go
I
ahead.
think I was just going to say, I think that's awesome. And I think that, of course, it's common for people to get excited and see these boxes on a screen and be like, well, how much does it cost? It's a great question, but it's like, you really don't have a way of answering unless you know what state they're in, like what everything is. So I love that Anderson offers this 45-minute session. And I will say, I actually was at an event I was speaking. Neal was supposed to speak. He couldn't attend, so I was speaking in Neal's place. And there was an Anderson event, and so Clint was speaking. It was like a whole day with Clint. And I already had entities set up. I've had entities since I'm in my 20s. Yes, I'm one of those people that has an S corp. I've got LLCs that my rentals are in, and I thought I knew a thing or two about this. And I saw Clint up there drawing all these boxes and making his little people and his little stick figures. And I was like, oh my gosh, I am so exposed. Like I thought I had stuff right. And I ran straight in and signed up for a strategy session. I had my strategy session with Seth, and they hooked me up. I mean, I became an Anderson client because they helped me understand where I was missing. I was missing a few key pieces, even though I thought I was there. But once I saw it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got exposure. And I'm really grateful that I took the time to do that and make those differences. And actually, I also worked with Anderson for my living trust, and I was very happy with those results as well. So they're not paying me to say this, but I am a happy Anderson client. I can attest to that. I've been working with Anderson now for about 5 years. Neal also works with Anderson. So
Yeah, yeah.
how about answering some other questions, Preston?
Yeah, I'm super excited to jump into the Q&A. So
Yeah.
that QR code you can scan with your phone and it'll take you right to the link because I am going to be switching back to the whiteboard to answer a bunch of the questions. I kind of scanned them
Okay.
already. So,
Great. I'm going to
but
start at the top and ask you. And these are some great questions. Thanks, you guys. Can you talk a little more about how you can move spare money to and from an LLC without commingling funds? Great question.
Yeah, it's a great question. I love that question. And thank you so much for asking that one. So when we're talking about, we have this LLC, and I'm just going to put Wyoming. That's the one we use the most because it's actually a lot cheaper than Delaware. Delaware is great too. And if you hear Delaware, yes, it is good. Wyoming is a tenth of the price, right, to upkeep. So Wyoming LLC, we use it a lot. And so if we're down here, oh, I don't want to use red. Let's use a different color. We'll use black. So I'm down here and I receive my Anderson paycheck. Nope, that's too big. We need smaller dollars. Just kidding, guys. I receive my Anderson paycheck and I'm like, great, I have these extra dollars and I have that range, right? So I have the top amount and the bottom amount. And if I put this in there, okay, that's going to put me over. So I want to move it up here into the LLC. This movement up into my non-liability, my co-protected non-liability LLC is a contribution. So I am contributing money up into it. And so the money's going to sit here. And hopefully I'm going to grow my money. And then, oh, you know what? Maybe I'm going to take that pot of money and go get a syndication and invest so I get some passive income. So I'm going to put the syndication in there and it's going to take the place. But hey, you know what? My kid is like, hey, dad, I need a new snowboard and I spent all my money. Will you buy me a new snowboard? And because I'm a sucker, I'm like, yes, of course I'll buy you a new snowboard. Or the thing he wants right now is a new bow because he does archery like for competitions. I didn't realize how expensive that is. It's like $2,000 for a bow. I'm like, holy smokes, bro. Anyway, so I'm like, all right, so he's pushing me down. So I can take any money I have left and take a distribution. Now, the question about commingling funds is a great question. I am never going to spend money on personal stuff out of the account from the Wyoming LLC. If I need that money, I'm going to take it as a distribution down to my account. I'm going to fill it back up and get rid of this negative, and then I'm going to spend it here to go buy that bow, right? But a contribution up, a distribution down, neither one of those are creating income. It's just moving money. So it's not a taxable event at all. So hopefully that clears up that question for you. If you have follow-ups, drop it into the Q&A. Happy to answer it.
If you live in California and do any business associated with your out of state LLC, it needs to be registered in California, foreign registered, right? We all know that. And that happens in lots of situations. Once it's registered in California, I would think it's vulnerable to the charge order that you are trying to avoid. Another great question.
Yeah, yeah. Good old California. So there's a couple of things. Generally, when we're working with our California clients, we'll set up that Wyoming LLC out here. And there is a way to actually break the chain of ownership. We use what's called a Wyoming statutory trust. And like, okay, so instead of the California resident owning that LLC, they don't own the LLC. Nope. They are beneficiaries of this trust. It's a business trust that owns the Wyoming LLC that can own all of your other LLCs out here, right? And so this actually helps avoid the franchise tax board as well. Because, yeah, if you owned this LLC directly, yep, you're going to pay the franchise tax and you might have to register in California. But if you own the beneficial interest in a trust that owns the LLC, you don't own that LLC. You break the chain of ownership, you don't have to worry about that registration, and then you can keep your structure fit just like that. So it's one way that we do it. I'm working with a client right now doing that, just that. In fact, we're doing Wyoming statutory trust to a Wyoming LLC, and then he has California properties to avoid the California franchise tax board. The California properties are actually going in these trusts as well because the
Nice.
California, they don't charge the franchise tax on the trust.
Interesting. So this question leads right into that. Is a Wyoming LLC better than a Wyoming statutory trust? When would one be better than the other?
That's a great question. So we only use statutory trusts if necessary, because it can be very difficult to get a bank account for the Wyoming statutory trust because banks just don't understand what's going on. I'm working with a banker right now on it, and she's been in the banking industry for like 34 years, and she's still like, I don't know. My underwriters for the accounts don't know. It has been a nightmare, honestly, with this particular banker. So it can be tough to get a bank account. So if Wyoming LLC is an option, then we don't use that statutory trust. If we can avoid it, we don't want to use it, but we do have that tool in our tool belt, if necessary. Yeah.
Is a living trust the same as a revocable trust? And does it allow you to take distributions from investments?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when we think of a living trust, like I said before, I like to think of it like a bucket. But the bucket is you. You are the bucket. The taxpayer ID is your social security number, and this is your trust. Oh, wow. I cannot spell apparently. Here we go. I'm going to erase that. You didn't see that. Trust. There we go. But the thing is, there's no lid on the bucket, right? So you can put stuff in, you can take stuff out. So let's say that you own, let's say you have your syndication directly in your living trust. Again, don't recommend it, but let's just pretend, right? So the syndication's in there, and the syndication, what was the rate you were like the cash return on that last one you're talking about? 6%. So it's kicking off cash. That's cool. So hey, now it's not really building up here. You can just take that cash straight out of your trust because the trust is you. You are the trust, and go buy your favorite attorney a steak dinner because it's your cash. Do with it what you want. I like to say that putting stuff into a living trust is like having a $20 bill in your left pocket, and then you're going to put it in your trust, which is your right pocket. You control it. It's your property. You do with it what you want. The taxpayer is you. So if you have any kind of asset or any kind of income going into your trust, it's going to end up on your 1040 while you're alive, right?
Yeah.
So you are your trust is you.
All right. Well, we've got about 5 minutes left, so you might want to answer these last ones that we throw at you a little
All
quicker.
right.
All right.
Lightning
Speed
round.
round, lightning round.
Yes.
Public-private collaboration. Are there specific legal frameworks that would facilitate seamless cooperation between government entities and private investors in a receivership-based development?
Javier, that one's a deep question. And I'm not going to answer that right here, right now. But yes, there are specific structures if you're doing anything with the government and specific states to avoid. Like, honestly, if you're doing business with the government, you don't want anonymity and they want to verify you. So I don't recommend Wyoming unless you live there. So yes, there are strategies, but it's very in depth. We're not going to talk about it today. Like, there's no way. Not in the lightning round.
Yeah. If the asset is based in California, does the LLC still provide the same protections? So essentially, protections are determined by where the LLC is set up, not where the asset is located. Is that correct?
So the outside charging order protection. So if you remember back to my California investor, this guy's in California. He has properties in California. So we use the Wyoming statutory trust to actually hold the property. We use this one to break the chain of ownership. And then you have the Wyoming LLC protections from the charging order. So yeah, there are ways to do it for you California folk.
What formalities should we follow for our LLC to maintain charging order protection? What
That's a great
formalities? Yes.
That's a great question. So don't commingle funds, and you actually need to have the language in your operating agreement saying the sole remedy for this LLC is the state charging order protections. And we always put that in our LLCs that are in Wyoming. So
Okay. This person formed an LLC for a rehab project and initially covered some expenses from my personal accounts before the bank account, LLC bank account was set up. Now that the LLC has funds, can I reimburse myself for those initial expenses by transferring the money back to my personal savings account? What is the best way to document the reimbursement to maintain legal and accounting compliance?
Yeah, so you absolutely can reimburse yourself for out-of-pocket expenses for your business. You just need to get essentially submit a reimbursement request with the receipts to your business, and then you just do an ACH from that account to yours, and you're totally fine there. Just keep those records, right? If you want to get really in depth, you can even hold a meeting of the members and do meeting minutes. Even if it's
Hmm.
just you, you could do that meeting in the shower alone, but just document it. Say, hey, on March 12th, 2025 at 8 p.m. I was in the shower. Don't tell them that, but was thinking about it and I think I should get reimbursed. So
If a mortgage is in your name, but the property has been quit claimed into an LLC, is there any piercing of the corporate veil?
there's no piercing of the corporate veil, but you have to be a little bit careful when you move title when there is a mortgage on it because the mortgage company could potentially call that loan due because of the due on sale clause because ownership changed. Now, if you have a Franny or a Fetty loan, that's not an issue as long as the owner of the LLC is the same as the owner was when you financed the deal.
So like a single member, yeah.
Or like my
So
wife and I are on a mortgage, then my wife and I need to own the LLC.
okay, got it. And so follow up on that question. If you have a line of credit in your personal name, example, all in one loan, but the property has been quit claimed into an LLC, does that commingle funds?
Nope, nope, because the line of credit's against your personal your credit and your property. Moving it over there is not going to cause an issue. Now, commingling of funds really happens when you use business funds to pay personal expenses. And not really vice versa, right? So if I'm out there swiping my business credit card to, buy my son's bow for $2,000, that is not a business expense. And that's a great way to pierce the corporate veil. But if I buy a case of paper at Costco for my business and request them to pay me back the $34, that's not commingling.
Last question. So for California residents, does it make sense to set up a WST to own the syndication interest?
That is a great question, and the answer is a solid maybe. Um, I hate to give you the attorney answer. It depends. That's one that we would want to sit down and see what else you have going on. If you only have that syndication interest and because the WST, the Wyoming Statutory Trust portion of it, doesn't give you the charging order protections. That's why we have to have this stack, right? There's no charging order protections here. The charging order protections are here in the actual LLC. So, and that's why we stack them like that. Otherwise, we wouldn't even have this guy if the WST gave you that protection. So, it's a cost benefit analysis, and we would want to talk with you about it. Like, hey, how much is your syndication investment worth? I mean, if it's $100,000, is it worth, an extra $400 to $500 a year for insurance? I don't know, maybe to you. I don't maybe, right? So it
Yep.
just really
Yep.
depends.
Entities require care and feeding of money every year in multiple ways. So the more entities you have, the more costs you have. So always have to balance that out. All right. Well, Preston, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you with us tonight. And I encourage everyone to, could you maybe just throw up that slide one more
Let me put
time?
it back up.
There you go. So last glimpse at the slide here. You can scan or you can go to directly to that link to get your free 45-minute strategy session. I highly recommend it. These people know a lot about a lot of things that could be very important to you. I think it's going to be really worth your 45 minutes personally. I know it was worth my time. So Preston, thank you. It's always great to see you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been fantastic being here. So.